thought when Sydney said it, she was talking about Demi. And then I don't know who Demi was talking about. And then I say goodbye to Katie, and I don't know who she's talking about. Am I missing something?
Last night's episode of The Bachelor had some surprising exits, some expected drama, but what a good episode it was. This is Roses and Rosé Live, and I am joined by the one and only Nick Viall. Hi.
How you doing?
I'm good, how are you?
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here, Nick. Guys, Nick is here, and here's the thing. I love when you give us your insight because former Bachelor in Paradise, former Bachelorette, you have the ultimate Bachelor Nation insight. You've done all the shows.
I have. Yeah, because I really just wanted to be able to, help you out.
To really be that
That's
level
why
of
I went on.
expertise. That's why. Okay, very quickly off the top, would you ever do Paradise again?
No.
No. Been there, done that?
Yeah. Listen, I keep saying, it works for people.
Yeah.
It hasn't worked for me.
Okay. Well,
listen, I'm thankful to this show. I feel like I'm a part of the family, and it's great to help out when they need my help, but as a contestant looking for love,
okay,
probably not for me.
Okay.
Right?
That means you wouldn't Bachelor it again?
No.
Okay.
They would never. No one wants it. I don't want it.
You never know with this show, Nick. You never know. Here you are in the Bachelor days, shirtless, ripped. Nick, I got to ask you first and foremost about Colton's level of shirtlessness, because here's my feeling.
It rivals
yours.
I think he might have surpassed me.
You were a super shirtless Bachelor. Did you feel super shirtless in comparison to the others?
You good?
A little. Well, I mean, the first episode was like the shower scene.
The shower scene, and they did that with Colton, too.
I was like, oh.
You looked great.
Thank you. Well, I mean, listen, they take what's called B-rolls. I'm sure you know.
Sure.
How much
Biz
they use
term.
that content over and over is kind of up to them.
Well, I keep saying on Ari's season.
It seems to be the same shower.
That's what I think. I think they did one hotel shower shot and one outdoor shower shot, and they've been using those quite a lot.
It's like, wow, it's a portable shower.
It's somehow Vietnam, that shower.
Yeah.
Ari's season, very little. I think we saw him shirtless one time. And what some of the ABC people had told me is like Ari felt like he didn't have enough time because he was named Bachelor so late, he didn't have enough time to beef up.
I was named late.
Oh.
I mean, lesson learned, always stay active. You never know when they're going to ask you to be the Bachelor. You just never know.
Never know.
So
Well,
for all you people out there,
you heard it here first.
stay in shape just in case the Bachelor comes calling.
Well, I think with Colton's season, they're now trying to make up for lost shirtless time.
Yeah, they're giving us a whole year, a whole 12 months.
They're like, we got to give the fans what we wanted. All right, well, let's talk about, so we started this episode last night. I think this season is great. I really love it.
I'm really enjoying it, yeah.
Are you?
Yeah.
Last night was major drama to me, and I was in.
To be honest, it was my least favorite, only because I think it's been such a good season.
Okay.
It felt like it was a little,
The bar's high.
It dragged a little bit.
The
and
first
I was
half.
bummed that Demi went home. What are we going to do now?
Oh, no.
It's like,
Was she the show for you?
I mean, she was a big part of it.
Some people said Demi gave them some Corinne vibes. Do you see the connection?
I see it, but I think that's sure. I mean, a little bit. I thought Demi was a little bit more. I thought she was. I liked her quick comebacks in the moment. I mean, Corinne was funny with kind of her lines that she came up with within her interviews, but just her reactions while interacting with the women, I found entertaining.
Well, let's go through last night's episode. The first half dragged a little bit to me. We saw Nicole and Onyeka sent home in the rose ceremony. But you know what I will say? Like, look, the first half dragged to me because I was like, I'm over their fighting. I don't want, this was from last episode. I don't want to hear more of it. But then I loved that they just both got sent home. I mean, he was making cuts, like, no thank you on the drama. What do you think?
I think it's great. I mean, I try to do that too. I mean, it's a time of the season where, as you can kind of see, Colton's kind of really formalizing his relationships, and sometimes in this part of the season, people kind of get dragged along. You always kind of notice when people go home at episode 5 or 6, and you're like, who is that? I've never. So I think now it will really get into all the women left. We know, they've gotten their airtime, they've gotten dates. They've had some time with Colton, and I think this is kind of the episode where you kind of separate the the contenders from the non-contenders.
Well, Hannah G gets a one-on-one, and she had gotten the first impression rose, and I know you and I have talked about this. Sometimes when you get that first impression rose, you're sort of set to the side a little bit because the lead knows they're into you. So now she gets a one-on-one. It's very sexy. There's a lot of making out. There's a lot of shirtlessness. There's a lot of outdoor showering. What do you think of his connection with Hannah G? Who are your top ones in terms of who you see him feeling right now?
I think Hannah's a player. Cassie, I think his date last week. Kaylin. Those three for sure.
Hannah, Kaylin, and Cassie.
And then, is it Taisha?
Taysha.
Sorry. Definitely. She seems to be the most level-headed of the women left.
Yeah.
I mean, she's older, but she's not even that old.
We gotta talk about that, though, because there was this little, we'll get to their little conversation at the end, which changed my mind.
Seemed a little catty.
It seemed a little catty.
It seemed a little catty.
I wanted to ask you with the Hannah G date, so we just saw they're getting these massages, it's a one-on-one. To you, what is the most successful type of date in terms of actually, like, bonding with someone? Because when they're abroad, especially, we see, like, it's boat date after boat date. You walk through a lot of markets. Like, what's the best type of date?
Well, there's always the two parts of the one-on-one date, right? There's the day part, which is whatever activity they're doing.
Walking through the market.
And then they have the dinner. But the walking through the market, I always thought that the dates that replicated real life as much as possible were the best dates to have. Even, the bungee jumping and the helicopters, it seems fun and over the top, but sometimes you actually get less time to really have a conversation. You're focusing more on like who should jump first on the bungee jump date. Walking through a market is a very normal thing to do, and the more you can replicate the real world, I think it makes it easier to have a connection with someone. Also, it's kind of make or break because of a real life situation. You have to do real life things like having a conversation with someone, as opposed to, again, with all the other distractions, you can kind of get by without having a real conversation because you're just being distracted by all the other things going on. So I always prefer those dates, and I think that's telling that Hannah got a date like that, just because it's not an accident she got a date like that, because of Colton probably wanted to replicate real life with her and his comfort level with being able to do something like that.
So the lead has a little bit of say on what they want the one-on-one date activity to
be? Yeah, I mean, listen, they're producing a show, so there's a balance there. I mean, sometimes it's never a coincidence that the person who has afraid of heights is bungee jumping. But, listen, no one gets 2 one-on-one dates in the first 6 episodes, right? So it doesn't really matter if you have it week 1 or, week 2 rather, not 9, or week 6. So they have their dates kind of planned. They know what cities they're going to. So there's a little bit of figuring that out, but there's a little bit of say, and like Colton will probably say who are his favorites, and that can fluctuate over time, and they'll try to figure out who's best for what date at that point.
Okay, good to know. I like it. So we love the walking around on the market dates. Now the group date was very violent. The group date was some kind of karate.
It was
date.
A little, yeah, I guess.
Yeah, they were really hitting each other in the face. And
a lot of squealing and noise making, though.
When you're on these dates as a contestant, are you like, yo, what's the insurance on this? Like, is there any risk to me here? Like,
well, I skipped, when I showed up late on Caitlin's season, I skipped the wrestling and the boxing.
Yeah, Jared Haven got a little bit hurt on that date, I remember.
I had to mime on Andy's season, so that was low risk, low risk in physical pain, but high risk in emotional embarrassment.
Okay.
Yeah, I think sometimes you get in those dates and you're kind of, well, I think the struggle contestants always have, and you see it every season, is what does this have to do with my relationship with Colton or Nick or Caitlin or Andy? It's just a kind of a necessary evil.
Well, and I think you're right that we're getting to that point where he is getting real connections, and so a date like that is almost feeling a little bit like, okay, we've got to move forward from this now because we want to see that real.
Usually you have dates like this earlier on.
Yeah.
I think, again, my guess is like a group date next week will be a lot of like just more like a cocktail party and then, stuff like that.
Well, speaking of the cocktail party at the group date later that night, I felt like Colton had to do so much reassuring to these women. I think we actually have a little bit of sound from him with Sydney, so why don't we cue up that soundbite?
So right now, I want to know that, can you get there with me? Do you think that
I want to try.
Yeah.
I mean, you saying these things to me, I see where you're coming at, and I'm trying. And I mean, I definitely owe that to you. I owe that to myself, and I owe that to us.
When you're watching him talking to Sydney or to Katie and talking them through their emotions, does that bring back? Is it a little PTSD for you?
Yeah, I got that asked that question earlier today in a different conversation. Not really. It certainly reminds you of how difficult it is to be the Bachelor.
Is he emotionally exhausted at this point?
Yeah. Well, I always early on the stresses of being the lead. It's very physically taxing early on because there's so many women that you're just trying to give time to. It's 18-hour days. There's a bit of a flip. It becomes more emotional taxing and less physical taxing. It's still always physically taxing, but again, we're kind of at that point where early on, everyone's just figuring it out. And now there are women who have gotten time with Colton. There are women who have made connection with Colton. So all some of them are feeling more confident in the relationship. And then there's other women who are watching those things go on and saying, all right, well, I've been here for this long, and I don't know him that much more different than I did 2 weeks ago. And so there's a little bit of stress there. And so they're, kind of bringing it to the forefront with Colton. And then Colton is just trying to he's just doing his best because every Bachelor is just trying to, selfishly figure out their feelings, but also realize that there's feelings at stake. And it's sometimes it feels like a winless battle, or damned if you do, damned if you don't. And you can kind of see that with Colton trying to say the right thing, but it's like you want to be direct and honest, but you also want to be nice,
What is the greatest struggle as the lead?
Well, it's that, right? I tried to, for me, it was when I knew it wasn't the right fit, I would send women home. But even then, I remember getting a little bit of criticism about, well, why is he really open to finding? I felt like that was, to me, the nicest thing to do, because it was giving the women an opportunity to have a conversation, as opposed to doing a rose ceremony and saying, well, you didn't get a rose, and then bye.
Yeah.
That way, making it more personable, I thought was sensitive, but everyone has a different opinion, and that's also really hard to do because you kind of surprise people, and it's a very difficult thing to be the Bachelor. I think Colton's doing a great job, but you can see his struggle, and it's only going to get harder for Colton.
Well, when you're going through this time of it being physically taxing, emotionally taxing, 18-hour days, you're not sleeping, how are you getting through that as the lead? Are you leaning on those, I know a couple producers kind of stick close with you. Are you leaning on the rare nap that you get? What is getting you through? What's the support system that you have?
You just try to survive. You really just kind of get in a flow. Yeah, it's a hard position to be in.
How do you ask for what you need, and are you like, look, I really need to take a 10-minute nap, or I need a snack?
Sometimes.
How do you get? What do you?
Yeah, sometimes. The producers, as much as sometimes they get criticism, they are your friends and family, and they're trying to work with you also while you have a responsibility. You can't take a day off. It's like, hey, we have to do this. Within that, sometimes it's like, hey, I just need 30 minutes. That happens sometimes, and sometimes there's not 30 minutes to spare. So it's just a balance. But at the same time, without the batch, there's no show. So the producers are mindful of that. They at some point, if you get sick, I know Ben talked about being sick while he was filming.
He had a stomach.
Yeah, thankfully, other than being just exhausted, I never really got sick, but that happens a lot. So it's just kind of a juggling act. So.
Well, we saw Sydney leave the show. Last week, Elise left the show. Demi, Colton sent her home. But do you think there's a reason that we're having a lot of kind of unusual departures this season in the past couple weeks?
I don't know. I always kind of get a kick out of that. Where people, I liked that Colton's doing that. It reminded me of, it seems more authentic, when you know, you don't always have to wait for a rose ceremony. And so when Demi shows up and it's kind of that point and she's like, hey, Colton, I'm falling in love with you, I think that really makes the lead think about, how do I feel, and obviously the lead can't say I love you back in those moments, but at the same time, if you really know that you're not going to get there, it's the right thing to do just to be honest and send them home, as opposed to making Demi stick it around for another week.
I mean, she called her mom with him.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the thing too, is I think good on Demi for trying to push it forward, right? But I think those moments of realness in the relationship probably reminded Colton that this is not my person. And so, you know, Demi put herself out there and Colton realized it wasn't. And I think that's the same as in life. I mean, sometimes there's nothing wrong with putting yourself out there, and you might still get rejected, and that's okay.
You have that clarity then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're seeing that, and I think things are becoming more real.
Well, I think so too, but they're also like no shortage on the drama. So then we have the second elimination moment of the night, the rose ceremony, and Katie ends up getting sent home. I don't think there was any surprise here. I still felt Katie was one of those ones where we still didn't know much about Katie.
We don't, and I was kind of that person who goes and you're just like, they get a lot of airtime this episode, but before it's like,
before that, had no idea.
Were you?
Barely knew her name.
It was kind of again, it's a tough position for Colton to be in. You know, when he said goodbye, he was like, I wish, you know, she was basically saying, I wish I could have done more, say more, and he kind of like, he was trying to say a nice thing, but almost was like, yeah, I wish you would have done more too. I was like, well, that probably doesn't make her feel good right now. But again, it's such a tough position to be in, because at the end of the day, you're just trying to figure it out.
I want to play this soundbite with Tayshia and Kirpa and their little kind of caught on microphone discussion at the end of the episode.
Everyone thinks if you whisper, they won't pick it up. It's like,
Here it is.
I'm so confused. I'm just like, let's take this thing. Watch, it's us two again. We're going to together.
So you think they did not know that they could be heard?
I think it's very common for cast members to forget about being mic'd. And I think it's like, I don't know, a subconscious thing that if they whisper and the producers can't hear them, they're not being heard, but they are being heard.
Well, what do you think they were talking about there? Because this was the big discussion, and Colton even said, am I missing something on whether certain women are here really to get married or for other reasons? And the question was, who are these women? Who is it?
I don't know. My guess is it's probably the show making an entertaining show. People always make a thing about, listen, it's a competitive atmosphere. I don't think there's anything wrong with the women like saying it could be us at the end. I mean, that happens every season, whether it's when they're not mic'd or not, of saying, well, what if it's us at the end? Like, that could be crazy, you know? Like, they're all emotionally invested. I don't think it makes it insincere to say, like, that's just the reality. They know that people are going to get eliminated, and there's friends, right? At this point, there's little pockets of friends. It could be, you make connections. And
it did make me look at
it sounds worse than it looks.
Oh,
it's
it
not,
does.
what you know, the music's playing. I mean, so what? They think it's them at the end.
It made me look at Tayshia a little differently, like, oh, maybe she, but I see what you're saying.
You know, but like, what did she really say?
Well, and some of the women, like Sydney told Colton, don't focus on shiny things. Do you think Colton's focusing on shiny things?
I think at this point, again, a lot of the women, when they get exited, say that. I think maybe it's sometimes fair, and maybe it's sometimes maybe not jealousy, but I don't know. All the women seem nice at this point. I don't know them personally. You know, there's always, even for Colton, there's whoever he ends up with, assuming he ends up with someone, there's going to be a lot to learn about her and each other. Yeah. And people don't necessarily fully reveal themselves in that world. I
wanted to ask you, Colton has told us that he quit the show. He quit being the Bachelor.
Did he?
That's what he says. And I wanted to ask you, as a lead, is that, you just called the Bachelor, it's kind of being your job. Is that a contractual worry? Did you ever consider quitting? Like, did you look at your contract? And think,
well, I don't know what he meant by that, if he actually did. Yeah, I guess I never, there were certainly moments where I wanted to.
Yeah.
You know, I think every lead has that moment where it's just like, you know, again, it's a stressful situation. I mean, you know, the producers can select 30 amazing women or 30 amazing men, and they might not be your person. I mean, every night people go to a bar, and there's 30 or 50 people. It doesn't mean that there's your person in there. And so that's kind of the stresses of being the lead, of the pressure of the expectation. You want to meet someone. There's the expectation to meet someone, and there's this nervousness of, what if my person's not in this group? And it's truly a terrifying feeling at times, and it gets stressful.
I have to ask, I mean, are you ever told, like, it is a job, you're paid, there's a contract. Are you ever told, like, hey man, you got to do this, it's in your contract?
No, I mean, no, there's never threat. Again, the producers are really, I do get defensive of producers because they truly are, they're your family, but you know, if you signed up to be there are expectations, and yeah, there's a contract, but no one's throwing that in your face.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still real life, and the producers recognize that. I mean, I guess it's possible, like, Colton could have quit, but I guess in my mind, you know, like, I did sign up for this, and you got to see it through.
Two very quick questions for you. One, we talked about outdoor showers. Do you get any grooming help on The Bachelor? Were you like, I need a wax, or do you do all the grooming yourself?
No, I mean, you know, The Bachelor's lucky enough to have a stylist and a makeup artist. I mean, the Bachelors, I'm assuming, use it less than, but you know, they'll touch us up for rose ceremonies. And if you need someone to do your hair, I did my own hair. It's just all, you know,
all personal preference.
As the lead, you're very fortunate that if you have certain needs, they are met.
Great. So did you get a wax as a Bachelor?
I did not. Did Colton? Maybe I should have. I don't know. But I did get massages, and they really. They do recognize how stressful it is, and they do their best to help you through it.
I also wanted to ask you, because fantasy suites are coming up, and this is a big, you know, topic of conversation for Colton. Tell me a little bit about, because look, you had a couple hookups on the show. How does that work?
Well, not my season. Right?
Okay, fair.
I limited it.
You limited it on your season, but how does that work when, like, because you had one hookup where, like, you know, the door closes and maybe there's some audio from behind. Like, how does that literally work when, like, the cameras are behind you and then are you like, okay, we're closing the door now? Like, walk me through that.
Well, again, there's the show. I always get a kick out of, you know how Demi snuck over?
Yeah.
It was funny because you watch it, you could tell how nervous she was. She was walking, like,
in the dark.
Very stiffed arm, and like. I always get a kick how, like, when I snuck over on Andy's season, like, Twitter was just like, how is he allowed to, like, you know, as if I snuck out, and like you see there's a camera on me, right? Like, the people as viewers don't pay attention to that. So when it comes to fantasy suites, obviously there's still a camera. When you are watching people close doors, there's a camera crew there, right? But after that's all done, people leave, right? So there's some starting and stopping, and yeah, it's really not that big of a deal. And I don't anticipate Colton's Fantasy Suite Week being much different from the viewer standpoint than any other season. I'm certain they will remind us ad nauseum that Colton's a virgin, that episode. I'm sure there'll be a lot of talk of that. And, you know, we won't watch it. And I don't think that those morning after shots will get an immediate update on his virginity. You know, right? I just don't, you know.
And here's where we stand.
Chris Harrison walks in. It's like, so? I don't anticipate that. I'm certain we will be reminded of it. And I'm sure there might be implications, but you know, we've seen implications before that don't necessarily mean anything.
Looking back on your 3 seasons, because I always ask everybody this question because some people have an answer. Any moment where you're like, that did not come across on TV the way it really happened. Oh, that got switched around a little bit, and I'd like people to know it really went down like this.
I mean, it would be hard for me to remember specific things. I mean, again, I think for the most part the show tries to tell the story. I mean, like on Andy's season, obviously I was generally considered the villain, you know. So a lot of it's the music too, right? The girls at the end, you know, talking about I think it could be us at the end. If they were playing like butterfly music and fairy music, everyone would be like, oh well, they're just in love with Colton. And when it's dramatic music, it feels bad.
Is that the most powerful tool?
Yeah, the music is. So like when I snuck over to see Andy, I was just excited to see her, and I was hoping to spend more time. And I walk over and it's dun 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 dun. So it's just a little bit of that. So it's just more of a feeling that sometimes the show does a good job of setting. That doesn't necessarily mean it didn't happen that way. It's just how it's the context of which it's shown. But nothing other than that comes to mind. I mean, there's certainly moments where you're just like, man, you know, even like I could watch it back because I lived it, and I thought, yeah, that's kind of what happened, but the people watching have a different viewpoint of it, and generally it's kind of the music, because as you watch it, you know that you remember what you did, so you remember your intentions, and sometimes intentions don't always come across the way they're meant.
Well, I gotta ask you about a new project that you are doing, the Viall. Can we say it Vial Files so that it rhymes? Viall
Sure,
Files.
Vial
But tell us
Files.
about it.
Yeah, thanks for asking. It's a new podcast that I have. I know a lot of people out there have podcasts. I tried to bide my time. I wanted to do it right. Obviously, we talk a little Bachelor, but my goal is to have it be a bigger than the Bachelor podcast. You know, I have guest hosts every week, and they're generally women. Sometimes men who have a different viewpoint than I have. I play the role of the white straight male, so I have that perspective down. So I want to talk about interesting and sometimes hard topics to talk about, and I want to bring in people who can share a different point of view than I have, and maybe, you know, educate me along the way, and have interesting conversations that I think people should be having out there, and we'll have some fun and talk about life. And it's a lot of dating stuff, and hopefully, you know, sharing my experiences, and hopefully people can benefit from my successes, and more importantly, probably my failures, and we can learn a lot from our failures.
Just had Rachel Lindsay on.
Yeah, Rachel's. My last episode was with Rachel, and that was great. That was a pretty Bachelor-heavy episode. She was fantastic. It was great to catch up with her.
Awesome.
And so, yeah, more to come.
All right, Nick Viall, thank you so much. Guys, of course, follow Nick on social media if you are not already, and check out the Viall Files. And Roses and Rosé is up every Tuesday morning. Thanks so much for watching ET Live.